The sun was setting on a quiet summer evening when 8-year-old Sarah Jenkins skipped through her backyard. Her long brown hair bounced with each step as she chased butterflies near the old oak tree. Her mom had just called her for dinner, but Sarah wanted 5 more minutes to play. Just one more butterfly, she whispered to herself, reaching out to a pretty blue one that landed on a flower. The evening was perfect, warm, peaceful, and filled with the sweet smell of her mother's garden. But then everything changed. The butterflies suddenly flew away. All the birds stopped singing. Even the crickets went quiet. Sarah looked up at the darkening sky and froze. Strange lights, bigger than any stars she had ever seen, blinked above her house. They were purple and green, moving in ways that no airplane could move. A shadow fell over the backyard. At first it was small, like a cloud passing in front of the sun. But it grew bigger and bigger until the whole yard was dark. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She wanted to run inside, but her legs wouldn't move. That's when she saw them. 5 massive creatures descended from the sky. They looked like dragons from her storybooks, but different. Their scales glowed with strange patterns. Their wings weren't like bat wings. They seemed to be made of pure energy, shimmering like the northern lights. Their eyes glowed with different colors: red, blue, green, purple, and gold. The largest dragon, with scales that shifted between black and deep purple, opened its mouth. Instead of breathing fire, it released a beam of light that created a circle around Sarah. She tried to step out of the circle, but an invisible wall stopped her. "Mom! Dad!" Sarah screamed, finally finding her voice. "Help!" The kitchen door burst open. Her parents ran out, their eyes growing wide with horror at the sight above them. Her father grabbed a garden rake, but what could a rake do against creatures bigger than their house? "Let her go!" her mother screamed, running toward the light circle. But another dragon shot a beam that created a barrier between Sarah and her parents. Sarah felt her feet leaving the ground. The circle of light was lifting her up like an elevator. She pressed her hands against the invisible walls, watching her parents getting smaller below her. Her dad threw the rake at the dragons, but it passed right through them, like they weren't even solid. The smallest dragon, with scales that shimmered between blue and silver, turned its head to look at Sarah. For a moment, their eyes met. Unlike the others, whose eyes were fierce and cold, this dragon's eyes seemed sad, concerned. Sarah couldn't be sure because just then, she floated up into the massive ship hovering above her house. The light circle carried her through strange corridors that looked like they were made of crystal. The walls pulsed with soft light, and strange symbols floated in the air. Sarah tried to remember every turn they took: left, right, left, up, down, but soon she was completely lost. Finally, they reached a large chamber. The light circle disappeared, and Sarah dropped gently onto a platform made of the same crystal as the walls. More dragons appeared, smaller ones, carrying strange devices that looked like a cross between wands and computers. The big purple-black dragon made a series of sounds: clicks, whistles, and deep rumbles. To Sarah's surprise, she could almost understand them, like when you hear a song in a language you don't know but can somehow feel what it means. The dragon was saying something about the chosen one, and finally found. Sarah didn't understand why, but she felt these words were important. One of the smaller dragons waved its device, and crystal bars grew from the floor and ceiling, forming a beautiful but strong cage around Sarah. The bars sparkled like diamonds, but no matter how pretty they were still bars. She was trapped. Sarah sat down in her crystal cage, trying not to cry. Through her tears, she noticed the small blue-silver dragon from before, watching her from the shadows. It tilted its head, and for a second, Sarah thought she heard a voice in her mind saying, "Don't be afraid." But before she could be sure, all the dragons left the chamber, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the soft pulsing light of the crystal walls. What did they want with her? Why could she almost understand them? And why did that small dragon seem so different from the others? As she pondered these questions, Sarah had no idea that her adventure was just beginning, and that her life, and the lives of these strange dragon creatures, would never be the same. Sarah woke up to a strange humming sound. Her crystal cage had changed. Now it looked like it was filled with tiny floating stars. As she reached out to touch one, it changed color from blue to pink. Curious, she touched another, and it turned green. Soon she was surrounded by a rainbow of tiny lights. The massive chamber had transformed too. What looked like rivers of light flowed across the ceiling, casting moving shadows that danced on the crystal walls. Sarah noticed something even stranger. The crystals seemed to be growing, slowly extending and changing shape like living things. Suddenly, the air filled with the sound of wings. 7 dragons entered the chamber, each one different from the others. The leader, the huge purple-black dragon from before, wore what looked like armor made of shifting shadows. Another had scales that changed color like an octopus. One seemed to be made partly of crystal itself. But what caught Sarah's attention was the smallest dragon, the blue-silver one from earlier. Unlike the others who moved with fierce, sharp movements, this one moved gracefully, almost sadly. It kept glancing at her when the others weren't looking. The shadow-armored leader spoke first. The sounds were strange, clicks, growls, and musical tones all mixed together. But this time, Sarah could understand more. The human child. Power. More than expected. The prophecy. The crystal-scaled dragon moved closer to her cage. Test. Must be sure. Ritual. Moonrise. Sarah gathered her courage and spoke up. I can understand you. Sort of. Why did you take me? All the dragons froze. The leader's eyes narrowed, glowing with intense purple light. The child speaks truth. She understands. It moved closer, its massive head nearly touching the crystal bars. How much do you understand, small one? Bits and pieces, Sarah answered, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Like hearing words underwater. The octopus-colored dragon hissed something that made the others step back. Too dangerous. Knows too much. End this now. But the blue-silver dragon suddenly moved between Sarah and the others. It made a series of beautiful musical sounds that seemed to calm the larger dragons. Sarah noticed something incredible. Wherever this dragon stepped, small flowers made of light grew from the crystal floor. The leader seemed to think for a moment, then nodded. Prepare, ritual chamber, when 3 moons align. As the other dragons left, the blue-silver one stayed behind, pretending to inspect the cage. When they were alone, it looked directly at Sarah and spoke in perfect English, its voice soft like wind chimes. My name is Starweaver. Listen carefully. You're not just a prisoner. You're the key to saving both our worlds. But you must not let them know you can fully understand me. Before Sarah could respond, Starweaver created a beautiful illusion of swirling stars around the cage, hiding them from view. The dragons you see aren't what they appear to be. We're all trapped in these forms. But you have a power inside you that's been sleeping for 1,000 years. What power? Sarah whispered. I'm just a normal girl. Starweaver's eyes sparkled mysteriously. Normal. Then why can you understand our language? Why do the crystals respond to your touch? Why do your emotions make light? It pointed with its tail to the floating lights in Sarah's cage, which had turned deep blue with her confusion. Suddenly, heavy footsteps approached. Starweaver quickly swept away the star illusion and moved back. 2 guard dragons entered, carrying strange devices that pulsed with energy. Rest now, Starweaver said in dragon speak, loud enough for the guards to hear. The ritual begins when all 3 moons align. As Starweaver left, Sarah sat in her cage, watching the lights change color with her thoughts. She had so many questions. What was this power she supposedly had? What did Starweaver mean about them being trapped in dragon forms? And most importantly, what would happen during this mysterious ritual? She looked up at the crystal ceiling. where the rivers of light had formed into 3 circles, like moons waiting to align. Whatever was coming, she had a feeling it would change everything. And somehow, that small dragon with the star-filled eyes would be the key to it all. In the distance, she heard the other dragons preparing something, their shadows moving across the walls like living paintings. The ritual was coming, and with it, secrets that had been hidden for 1,000 years would finally come to light. The 3 moons began to align above the crystal chamber. Their light streamed through the ceiling, creating patterns that looked like ancient writing on the walls. Sarah noticed her skin was starting to shimmer, like she had stardust flowing through her veins. 7 dragon elders formed a circle around her cage. Each wore different crystal accessories that hummed with power. One had a crown of floating gems, another wore rings of pure energy around its wings, and the leader's shadow armor now rippled with purple lightning. "Begin the awakening," the leader commanded. The dragons raised their heads and released beams of different colored light that struck Sarah's cage. Instead of being scared, Sarah felt a strange warmth spreading through her body. But then something unexpected happened. The crystal bars of her cage began absorbing the dragon's light beams. Sarah's body started glowing brighter and brighter, not with the dragon's colors, but with a pure white light that seemed to come from within her. Small objects around the chamber, crystals, tools, even pieces of the dragon's accessories, began floating. "Impossible!" the crystal-scaled dragon roared. "She's channeling the ancient light." Sarah felt knowledge rushing into her mind like a waterfall. She suddenly understood the strange symbols on the walls. She could hear the crystals singing. Most incredibly, she could see threads of light connecting everything in the chamber. The dragons, the crystals, even the air itself. The leader dragon stepped back, its purple eyes wide with shock. "In all our millennia, no human has ever." But before it could finish, Sarah's power surged. The white light burst from her in a wave, transforming everything it touched. The floating crystals turned into spinning galaxies of light. The chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the vast alien city beyond. And most surprisingly, wherever her light touched the dragons, their forms flickered, briefly revealing different creatures underneath. Starweaver, who had been watching from the shadows, quickly flew to Sarah's side. The prophecy wasn't complete. It said in English, no longer caring if the others heard. "They thought you were the key to the ritual, but you're actually the ancient light bearer." The other dragons began arguing in their musical language, but now Sarah could understand every word. "The human child has too much power. She can see our true forms. The elder's curse is weakening. Lock her in the dark crystal." But when 2 dragons tried to approach Sarah, her new power reacted. Threads of light shot from her hands, weaving themselves into beautiful patterns. Where the patterns touched the ground, strange alien flowers bloomed, plants that seemed made of crystal and starlight. The leader dragon raised its wings for silence. "Take her to the deep chamber," it ordered. "No light has penetrated those crystals for 10,000 years. Not even the ancient light can escape." As guard dragons approached with dark crystal chains, Sarah looked desperately at Starweaver. The small dragon's eyes were filled with both fear and hope. It quickly pressed its snout against the cage bars, transferring a thought directly into Sarah's mind. "Don't fight them. Yet. The deep chamber is where the truth began, where our real forms were first locked away. Your power didn't appear by accident. It awakened here for a reason." Sarah nodded slightly, even as the dark chains wrapped around her glowing form. The dragons led her toward a black crystal doorway that seemed to swallow all light, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She could feel her new power humming inside her, growing stronger with each step. As they descended into the darkness, Sarah noticed something extraordinary: tiny cracks in the dark crystals, glowing with the same pure light that now lived within her. Whatever secrets lay in the deep chamber, whatever truth about the dragon's real forms was hidden there, she knew one thing for certain. The ancient light had awakened for a purpose, and she was just beginning to understand her role in this alien world's destiny. Behind her, 3 moons hung in perfect alignment, casting long shadows that looked less and less like dragons with each passing moment. The deep chamber was nothing like Sarah expected. Instead of darkness, she found herself in a vast space where gravity seemed optional. Dark crystals floated like islands in the void, each one containing frozen memories that glowed when she passed by. Her own light power created ripples in the air, like dropping stones in a pond made of starlight. "Welcome to the Memory Vault," Starweaver's voice echoed. The small dragon emerged from behind a floating crystal, but something was different. Here in the deep chamber, its dragon form was more transparent, like a costume made of light that wasn't fitting quite right. "Why do you look faded?" Sarah asked, her chains of dark crystal starting to crack with her growing power. Starweaver landed on a nearby crystal island. "Because here, at the heart of our world, it's harder to maintain the curse's illusion. Look closer at the memories around you." Sarah focused on the nearest crystal. Inside, she saw creatures of pure energy and light, with bodies that flowed like liquid starlight and wings made of aurora borealis. They were beautiful, peaceful beings that could change their shape at will. "That's what you really are," she whispered in awe. "We were the Luminians," Starweaver explained, its dragon form flickering more. "We could dance between dimensions and paint with stardust. Our cities were made of living light, and our songs could create new worlds." Suddenly, the dark crystal island beneath them began to play its memory like a movie made of light. Sarah saw a massive being of shadow and purple lightning, the dragon elder in his original form, standing before an ancient artifact that looked like a crystal heart. "Our leader, Nova Shadow, discovered the heart of dark light," Starweaver continued. "He believed its power could make us even stronger. But the heart was never meant to be touched. Its darkness began corrupting him, turning his light into shadow." The memory shifted, showing Nova Shadow transforming into the dragon they knew today. In his madness, he used the heart to curse us all, trapping us in these dragon forms. He thought it would make us powerful, but instead, it locked away our true nature. Sarah's chains completely shattered as her power responded to the truth. "But why did he keep you all trapped for so long?" Before Starweaver could answer, a new memory crystal floated near them. Inside, Sarah saw an ancient prophecy written in light. "When 3 moons align and stars descend, a child of earth shall comprehend. Ancient light in human form shall break the curse of dragon sworn. But beware the heart of darkness deep, for shadow's price is light to keep." Nova Shadow believes that if the curse is broken, we'll lose our dragon powers and become vulnerable, Starweaver explained, its form now barely dragon-like at all. "What he doesn't understand is that our true forms were always more powerful than any curse could be." Suddenly, waves of shadow rippled through the deep chamber. Nova Shadow's voice boomed from above. "Traitor, you dare reveal our secrets." But Sarah saw something the elder dragon didn't. Every time his shadow waves hit her light ripples, tiny cracks appeared in reality itself, showing glimpses of the luminous city that existed before the curse. Starweaver's dragon form finally melted away completely, revealing its true Luminian self, a being of swirling blue and silver light with wings made of constellation patterns. "Sarah, quickly, use your power to read the memory in my light. There's more you need to know." As Sarah reached out to touch Starweaver's true form, the deep chamber filled with the sound of dragon wings. Nova Shadow and his guards were coming, but they were too late. The moment Sarah's light connected with Starweaver's, 1,000 years of hidden memories flooded into her mind. She saw how the Luminians once helped maintain balance in the universe. She learned that her own power came from an ancient connection between Earth and the Luminian world. Most importantly, she discovered why Nova Shadow was so afraid of the curse breaking, because only together could a human light-bearer and a Luminian undo what the heart of dark light had done. As dragon roars echoed through the chamber, Sarah and Starweaver stood back to back, their light powers combining to create a shield of pure energy. The real battle was about to begin. And this time, Sarah knew exactly what she was fighting for, not just her freedom, but the liberation of an entire race of light beings trapped in dragon form. Above them, the three moons' alignment reached its peak, and the heart of dark light pulsed somewhere in the shadows, waiting to play its part in the prophecy's completion. Sarah and Starweaver raced through the twisting corridors of the Crystal Palace, but this time everything looked different through Sarah's awakened eyes. The walls weren't just crystal. They were frozen waves of ancient Luminian magic, and her light power made them pulse with remembered life. "They're sealing the sky gates." Starweaver's voice chimed like stellar bells. In its true Luminian form, it left trails of constellation patterns floating in the air as it moved. "We need to reach the crowned spire before Nova's shadow activates the heart of dark light." Behind them, dragon roars echoed, but they weren't just sounds anymore. Sarah could see them as waves of dark energy rolling through the air. Each roar left cracks in reality, showing glimpses of the shadow realm where Nova's shadow had found the cursed heart. Suddenly, they entered a massive chamber Sarah hadn't seen before, the Stellar Archive. Thousands of crystal spheres floated in spiraling patterns, each containing a star's worth of Luminian knowledge. As Sarah ran past them, her power accidentally activated several spheres. They burst open, releasing streams of ancient memories into the air. Dancing light beings creating nebulas. Young Luminians learning to weave stardust. Nova's shadow, before the curse, teaching others to sing new worlds into existence. "Look out!" Starweaver's warning came just as a wall of dragon guards materialized before them. But Sarah was ready. She reached out with her power, not to fight, but to reveal truth. Her light touched each dragon, making their forms flicker. "Remember who you are," she called out. Where her light touched the dragons, scales began cracking like glass shells, revealing glimpses of Luminian light underneath. One young dragon guard looked at his flickering claws in wonder, then another. Soon, half the guards were fighting against their own curse, their dragon forms breaking apart to reveal their true stellar nature. "She's freeing them." Nova's shadow's voice boomed from above. "Stop them before they reach the heart." The chamber filled with shadow lightning, but something incredible happened when it struck Sarah's light shield. Instead of blocking the shadows, her power transformed them into aurora curtains that danced through the air. Each transformed shadow revealed another piece of Nova Shadow's lost memories, his early days as a wise leader, his love for teaching young Luminians, his tragic first encounter with the heart's corrupting power. The Stellar Gate. Starweaver pointed to a spiraling portal ahead that looked like a galaxy turning in on itself. It leads straight to the crowned spire. But as they ran toward it, the remaining dragon guards released their fire breath. Sarah watched in fascination as the flames took shape in the air. Not just fire, but ancient dragon magic mixed with trapped Luminian light. Acting on instinct, she reached out and began weaving the fire itself, turning it into bridges of pure energy. "Now," she shouted, and the freed Luminians soared across her fire bridges, their light bodies leaving trails like shooting stars. Just as they reached the Stellar Gate, Sarah felt a powerful presence behind her. She turned to see Nova's shadow landing on a crystal platform, but now she could see him clearly, both the corrupted dragon and the trapped Luminian inside, fighting against himself. "You don't understand what you're unleashing," he growled, but his voice carried echoes of singing stars. "The heart protects us. Without its power, the shadow realm will." Before he could finish, Sarah grabbed Starweaver's light stream hand and jumped backward into the Stellar Gate. As they fell through space, folded in on itself, she caught one last glimpse of Nova Shadow's eyes. And for just a moment, they held not anger, but fear. Not for himself, she realized, but for a truth he'd been trying to hide for 1,000 years. The gate spun them through a tunnel of light and memory, heading toward the crowned spire where the heart of dark light waited. But now Sarah understood. Breaking the curse wouldn't be enough. They needed to heal not just the Luminians, but Nova's shadow himself, and whatever darkness he'd been protecting them from all this time. Above them, the three moons began to sing their alignment song, and the crowned spire lit up like a beacon of both light and shadow, calling them to the final confrontation. The crowned spire was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It was a tower made of intersecting light beams and shadow streams, reaching so high it seemed to pierce the three singing moons above. At its center, suspended in a web of dark energy, pulsed the heart of dark light. A crystal that looked like a black hole had been frozen in mid-beat. Nova's shadow landed on the spire's peak, his massive dragon form now crackling with both shadow lightning and trapped starlight. The curse had him caught between forms. One moment a dragon of darkness, the next a fragmenting shell revealing the desperate Luminian within. "You want to know why I did it?" His voice echoed across dimensions. "Look." He gestured with his wings, and reality peeled back like pages in a cosmic book. Sarah and Starweaver gasped as they saw what lay beyond their universe. Beings of pure void, world-eaters that made dragons look like butterflies. They were held back only by the barrier created by Nova Shadow's curse. "The heart of dark light doesn't just hold our dragon forms," Nova Shadow revealed, his voice carrying ancient pain. "It powers the only shield strong enough to keep the Void Hunters from entering our dimension." But Sarah saw something Nova Shadow had missed. Where her light touched the barrier, it didn't weaken, it transformed. The darkness didn't disappear, it merged with the light, creating something new. "There's another way," Sarah said, stepping forward. Her power had evolved beyond simple light now. When she moved, she left footprints of flowering galaxies. The Void Hunters feed on pure light or pure darkness. But look what happens when we combine them. She reached out, letting her light spiral around Nova Shadow's shadows. Where they merged, they created a crystalline aurora that the void creatures couldn't even look at. Starweaver understood immediately. Its Luminian form began to sing in the ancient star language, a melody that made the three moons harmonize above them. Other freed Luminians joined in, their voices weaving light and shadow together like cosmic fabric. "Impossible," Nova Shadow whispered, watching as Sarah's touch began healing his fragmenting form. "The prophecy never spoke of harmony between light and shadow." "Because some truths can't be prophesied," Sarah replied. "They have to be discovered." A heart of dark light resonated with their song, its darkness no longer corrupting but combining with the Luminian's light. Nova Shadow's dragon form began to crack, but instead of breaking, it transformed. The shadows didn't vanish. They became part of his new form, a Luminian of twilight rather than pure light. Sarah channeled her power into the heart, not to destroy it but to transform it. Under her touch, it became the heart of dawn, a crystal that pulsed with the power of light and shadow in perfect balance. The crowned spire responded, its structure shifting from harsh angles to flowing curves that sang with harmonic energy. The barrier against the Void Hunters didn't disappear. It evolved into a symphony of light and shadow that the void creatures couldn't comprehend, let alone penetrate. Nova Shadow looked at his new form in wonder. Where once was endless night, now aurora patterns danced across his twilight body. "For 1,000 years, I thought I had to choose between darkness and light," he said. "I never imagined they could dance together." But their victory celebration came too soon. Just as the last dragon forms were transforming back into harmonious Luminians, a deep tremor shook the spire. The Void Hunters had felt the barrier changing, and they were gathering for an assault that would test their new power of harmony to its limits. Sarah stood with Starweaver on one side and Nova Shadow on the other, their combined light and shadow powers rippling out like waves of dawn. Above them, the three moons aligned perfectly at last, ready to power either their greatest triumph or their last stand. The final battle was about to begin, and this time they would face it not as light against darkness, but as wielders of twilight, defenders of the dawn, and keepers of a harmony that even the prophecies never dared to dream of. The Void Hunters struck like a tsunami of anti-existence, their forms defying both light and shadow. But this time, the defenders of the crowned spire were ready. Sarah, Nova Shadow, and Starweaver stood at the points of a twilight triangle, the heart of dawn pulsing between them with the rhythm of new creation. Now, Sarah called out. Her power had evolved once again. She no longer just wielded light, but the space between moments, the dawn between night and day. Where she moved, reality rippled like water, reflecting both starlight and shadow. The transformed Luminians rose in a spiral around the spire, their bodies now shimmering with what Sarah had named spectrum harmony, light and shadow dancing together in patterns that created new colors the universe had never seen before. Each Luminian sang a different note in the star language, building a symphony that made the three moons resonate. Nova Shadow spread his twilight wings, no longer fighting his darkness, but embracing it as part of a greater whole. Remember the ancient forms, he called out. The Luminians began to shift shapes, not just between light and shadow, but into cosmic patterns that reflected the fundamental structures of reality. Starweaver took the lead, its form becoming a living constellation that moved like liquid stardust. Other Luminians followed, transforming into aurora rivers, nebula clouds, and geometric patterns that spoke the language of creation itself. The Void Hunters charged, but each time they tried to devour light or darkness, they found only harmony that their chaos couldn't consume. Sarah understood what they feared, not light or shadow, but the balance that gave both meaning. The heart of dawn, she called out. It's not just a shield, it's a lens. Understanding flowed through the harmony bond they all now shared. The transformed Luminians positioned themselves around the heart like facets of a living crystal. As the three moons aligned perfectly overhead, their combined light struck the heart of dawn. What happened next defied description in any human language. The heart began to sing in colors that weren't colors, its harmony spreading out across dimensions. Where it touched the Void Hunters, it didn't destroy them. It offered them something they had never known before: balance. Some of the void creatures fled back to their dimension, but others, drawn by the song of harmony, allowed the light-shadow symphony to touch them. Their chaotic forms began to crystallize, not into stone, but into new kinds of beings that could exist in the spaces between light and shadow. The crown spire transformed one final time, becoming a bridge between dimensions. Not a barrier anymore, but a gateway that only beings of harmony could cross. The three moons song reached its crescendo, and reality itself seemed to take a deep breath and reshape itself around the new balance that had been created. Sarah looked at her hands, now shimmering with both starlight and shadow patterns. She had become something new too, not just a human light bearer, but a dawn walker, able to step between light and shadow and help maintain the harmony of all realms. Nova Shadow bowed to her, his twilight form now peaceful and wise once again. You taught us that true power isn't in choosing sides, but in bridging them. The prophecy spoke of ending a curse, but you showed us how to create a blessing instead. Starweaver, now a beautiful swirl of constellation light and cosmic shadow, floated to Sarah's side. Will you stay? It asked. There's so much more to learn, so many new harmonies to discover. Sarah smiled, looking back toward Earth, then at her new family of Luminians. I don't have to choose, she realized. Like light and shadow, like harmony and chaos, I can be of both worlds. A bridge, just like the crown spire. The transformed Void Hunters who had chosen harmony began learning the star language, their crystalline forms adding deep ancient notes to the cosmic symphony. The heart of dawn pulsed with the combined life force of all realms, no longer a weapon or a shield, but a reminder that the greatest power comes from bringing together what once was separated. And so, the story that began with a kidnapping ended with a birth, the birth of a new kind of universe, where light and shadow danced together, where harmony included chaos, and where a human girl who dreamed of dragons discovered that the greatest magic comes not from power, but from understanding. Above them, the three moons began their slow dance apart, but their song remained, echoing through all dimensions, a lullaby for a cosmos learning to embrace both dawn and dusk, both shadow and light, both ending and beginning.